Welcome to Product Academy Tough Stuff, the podcast where we cut through the noise and get straight to the toughest challenges in product management. I'm Tanja Lau.
And I'm Francesca Cortesi.
In each episode, we tackle one tough question. No fluff, no filler. Just candid insights from seasoned product leaders.
Our guests deliver actionable, real-world answers in 10 minutes or less. Whether you're an experienced product leader or just stepping into the product world, this is your go-to podcast for sharp, tested advice, condensed for your busy schedule.
One tough challenge, practical insights, short and real.
Let's dive in.
Julia, hello. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Tanja. Excited to be here.
Thanks. So today's top question is, how do we avoid over-customization in B2B? And before we benefit from your experience in this area, let's maybe talk about what does over-customization look like in B2B? How do I know my product is over-customized, and why could that be a problem?
So I think first of all, like just looking at B2B and customization, I wouldn't say that customization in general is always the worst thing you can have, because there are business models where customization might be the thing what customers are paying for, and you might just have 10 customers and they are paying for the customization. Then it doesn't have to be a problem. So that has to be said first. But I'm, from my background, coming from SaaS, B2B, and I think there is where the problem with customization starts, because in SaaS you're trying to build up a really standardized software that helps your whole customer segment, and that you can scale fast, because this is what your business model is building on. And if you are starting to customize there a lot, and you're going to one customer and they tell you what to build and you build it, and then the next one, and you maybe even build things that just one customer can use, this has huge problems. So problems just could be or are slower development because of way higher complexity. It is tech debt and UX debt, your whole user experience is going to get worse. And it can end, in the worst case, in a dead end, where you're not getting further. You might even lose your product market fit if you're making too much customization. So those are just a couple of the problems that may start if you are going over the top of customization.
Yeah, that sounds a bit scary, and sounds also like you're getting into agency territory. Like an agency would be customizing a lot for their customers, and that can be a business model in itself, as you were saying. Have you ever been at risk for over customization in one of your companies that you have worked for, or do you? Yeah, can you share some stories of how that might feel and how you ended up there?
Of course, it's difficult to say when do you over customize, or when is the tipping point. So I would say we haven't been over the point, because I would say you're over the point if you really have to redo whole parts of your product again, and you have come to a dead end, or people are journeying your software because your UX has been really bad. I think then you're already over the top, and this is really bad. I have not been there, luckily. But I have done customization that I would have, hindsight, not have done. So just as an example of what happens if I do customization. So we had a customer and they wanted something on the dashboard, and it was so simple. They just didn't want to see one number, because we have it was written worst case scenario, and they didn't want to have the worst case scenario on their dashboard, because it was a mindset thing in the company. So easy. This was just 2 hours of work for an engineer. We put it behind a feature flag, easy thing, happy customer, easy to build, not high development costs, perfect. So let's do it. But what happens with even such a small feature, because there are no small feature requests and no small customizations, they're always big, because years later, I think 2-3 years later, we changed something in the permission system, and no one remembered that we had this customization and we had this feature flag. And then it came up, we had a huge bug, we had a problem with it, and it took us so long, a half a day or a day to invest just to make sure the permissions are working with this customization. And this just shows how expensive customization can be, even so it seems really small. And I would say even this is an over customization because the value of it is not that big that I would take all the costs that are coming later on.
So in hindsight, how would you have handled that situation?
So I think in hindsight, I would for sure have done more product discovery. Like, why do they really want it? And why do they want it? And are there other customers don't want it? I would have thought of maybe configurability instead of customization, because there might be other customers that just have a wording problem with worst case scenario as well. So maybe we can configure like how you can call this, but not just put it behind a feature flag. But of course, this would have been more investment in the beginning than just changing it. I would probably have done more education internally and more education with the customer to make them understand like why we're not going to do this.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, okay, I understand why it's not so good to even end up in that situation. So what are things that you can do to avoid even falling into the trap of over customization in the first place? Are there any strategies that you have developed to avoid this?
Yes, so I think the first thing is product discovery. So what do I mean with product discovery? I think if a customer is coming, I always have to understand what is the problem behind that. And I would always like to understand, why does this customer have this and others don't have that? Because that's what SaaS is about, standardizing. So understanding is what are the attributes that this customer is having that they are wanting, that they are having this request and others are not having it. This is like always where you get way clearer in like understanding your customer segments. And this helps you enormously. Second, I think I would, or like one thing I would always do if I come into a B2B product company is build up a good insight management system. Like a lot of companies don't have that. What do I mean by that? I mean that you have to have a good process and flow of requests coming in from customers. And it's not only requests, it's actually feedback, it's wishes, it's requests, it's problems, all of this. And you need to have a good funnel of like all the information coming in from customers, from customer facing teams. And this has to go into product and they have to process all of those insights. And then they have to aggregate it. And then on an abstracter level, they have to act upon them, but not on one request, but on as soon as they have 10 requests, they can look at it again. And then they can understand, okay, now I understand what the bigger problem is behind that, or what are the special things about this customer group. So I think product discovery, insight management, internal education. So educate your customer facing teams on how they have to like handle requests and why it's not good to follow customization. And the same with customers. Educate customers so they understand what value they have from a standardized product and if we are not doing customization. So those are a couple of things that really help you to like avoid customization.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like you're looking for signals and not just for noise, right? You're looking for patterns as a PM in these customer request snippets that you're getting. I still can imagine that there is a lot of tension to manage between sales, who has to, or customer service, or whoever is in like the customer facing person who gets these requests, or even has prospects, customers who would join you if you had certain functionality. And the PM is still in the phase of gathering data and figuring out, is this a pattern? Do we ever act on this or not? So how do you handle this tension between not over promising something, but also not jumping on the first request you're getting?
Yeah, totally. So first of all, like I know this problem so good, like just especially in the beginning when I started at Alasco, I didn't have the self-confidence of explaining like, why shouldn't we do something? I had the gut feeling of, oh no, it's not good if we're doing this customization, but I couldn't explain it in a good way to my stakeholders. And there was so much pressures from all sides, from sales, from customer success, from founders who thought, hey, we have to get this customer, let's do it and do it. And I think in reality, there will always be a little bit of customization and it can help and you can learn with it, but you have to set it up in a good way. But I think you always have to take or like explain your stakeholders what the hidden costs are of customization. So because what happens is they calculate an ROI in sales and say, hey, it's only how much development time do you need for it? And I say 2 days. And then they say, okay, perfect, we get that much money out of it. And then the ROI sounds amazing for the customization. But they forget about the hidden costs behind that. And this is what you have to do as product person, explain everyone what the hidden costs are. John Cutler had an amazing LinkedIn post about it. He said it's not just cost of development, it's cost of maintenance, it's cost of complexity and therefore slower engineering, it's cost of internal education, it's cost of service and support, it's even opportunity costs, like I could do something else with this time, and many more. So those are just a couple of the many costs that come up with customization. And I think this is what you have to do with stakeholders. You have to really explain them, what does it mean to do this?
Sounds like it helps if you have a clear long versus short-term strategy in place. What are you optimizing for? What does success look like on which time frame? Because you need to take trade-offs there, I guess, right?
Exactly. And that's why customization sometimes makes sense, because you sometimes have to do short-term goals. For example, if I'm shortly before a funding round with my startup, it might make sense to get this one customer and do customization. But then I have to be clear, hey, this is tech debt we're building up. And I might have to come back to this and rebuild it and make it better. But for now, I'm making a shortcut. I'm getting a short-term goal with that. I have a better MRR for my funding round, and then I might go back to it. But my long-term strategy is something else. And this is so important. Like if you have a good strategy and a vision, it might also be easier to argument against the customization.
Yeah. And it means that you need to be explicit when your prioritization framework changes, right? When you would suddenly have to think short term because of cash flow and other reasons, and you need to be explicit about it and also call it out as something that is temporary so that people don't get used to it, right?
Absolutely.
But I've seen cases where companies kind of depended heavily on the cash flow of 2 or 3 bigger customers who had a lot of power over that company because they were funding basically all of the development. And the company had the goal to actually target another group of customers who were self-onboarding instead of these bigger customers who had to be onboarded manually with a lot of customization. But it was really hard for them to make the switch towards this new target group of self-onboarded customers because they depended heavily on these other bigger companies. What would you advise them to do in such a situation? If you feel like you know where you want to head, you want to change something about your target customers, but you depend so much on their cash.
Yeah, that is a difficult situation. Like a lot of companies are in this situation, or it happens to come. But I think you might have to switch on a couple of things there, because you might not have the perfect product market fit if you heavily depend on those big customers and they still want customization. So there might be a really hard decision to be done. And like the decision is, do I stay with the big customers where I might not be able to scale long term, but where I have my current cash flow with? Or am I optimizing for scaling with the small customers? Or are there more big customers and I scale with them? Like in the end, it's always the question of like, how can I scale? And if I can't do it with this group and I have this other group, I might not have a perfect product market fit. And then there are hard decisions to be taken. And I should take them earlier than too late, because if I come into a dead end and I have to rebuild a lot of things and I have like to delete sunset features, a lot of customers will churn. So I have to make this decision on a good product market fit early enough, and I have to be really honest with myself and with the founders or with the senior leadership team on like, hey, should we go further this road or do we have to make a turn?
Yeah.
So I think the first step here, because we are in a niche market, we are in the construction industry, and it's an under-digitalized market. I think this is a really important thing to say, because it might work differently if you're a personio working with companies that maybe are already more digitized. But in such a niche market, the first thing you have to do is educate customers on like what is agile development and why do you even want to co-create with them. Like they are used to traditional software companies where they send a request and then someone tells them, okay, pay this amount of money and we build it for you. So this is how they want to work with Alasco as well. So the first thing is like change their mindset. Explain them why standardization is good for them. What are the principles of product management here? Like, how does agile product development work? And why do we work with them in a way that we like test prototypes? And this takes a little bit in the beginning when you get a customer, because we need to change their mindset. But as soon as they understood how this is working, it's so much easier to work with them, because then you can like really involve them in prototype testing and experimentation and in stuff like you just mentioned, like an advisory board. So we had customers that are easy to work with and customers that were exactly our target group. And we put them into an advisory board and made workshops with them. So we, for example, got them into our office and asked them like, what are the biggest problems you see coming up in your industry? Like, how do you work with this? We tested prototypes with them. And this helped us to make like short iterations and always have access to people, and also to have them discuss topics. Because if they discuss topics, they also start to move away a little bit from their strong opinion on one thing. And we always learned a lot from those advisory boards and like from working so closely with our customers.
Take a lot to convince them to do that, or did they want to be on board right from the beginning?
They
Because
wanted
it's a time
to be on
investment.
board. Because they knew that this is the only way they can shape Alasco, because they knew we were not going to make customization. So the only way they get what they want, for example, a new feature area or something, is like interacting here and like explaining why they have a problem. So they were always eager to do this. And also just the single people like being on the advisory board, they really liked it, because it was always a new way of working for them in workshops, and like they just liked the experience and what they could learn personally from this workshop.
How often did you meet with them? Is there a certain cadence, or was it more in the beginning and now it's slowing down?
Yeah, it was especially in the beginning, because in the beginning you don't have a lot of customers, or like, or at least we didn't have as a B2B company. You never have like a lot of quantitative data. So we were heavily relying on a couple of customers. And in the beginning, it was really helpful for us to have always access to customers. Now that we are bigger and we have a lot of customers, the access has become way easier. And now we're still doing it sometimes, but not as much as we did it in the beginning.
Were they prospects, basically?
In this case, they were our customers, but to be honest, for product discovery, you have to check more for product market fit, and to check like how can you sell your product, or why is it not positioned right. You could also do this workshop with not or like with prospects. Yeah, we did work with letters of intent once in a while, but it's not the best thing to do in the end, because it's a lot of times doesn't work out. We sometimes had customers that were, or like we had prospects that were customers that wanted to have an expansion where they would be paying for in the future, and we actually let them pay for sign a contract that had milestones in there. So we said, hey, as soon as we have this, your monthly recurring revenue doubles or something. And it was not just a letter of intent, but it was like really a contract. But this was only possible because they were already customers. I think in the end, if you have built a good product, they will buy it anyway. And if you have not built a good product and they don't want to buy it, then you haven't built a good product. So it doesn't help me to have a letter of intent that they want to buy it, because it's the best test of like validating, is it the correct thing that we're working on, and are other people wanting it? So I would say if they sign in the end, then you have tested it. Yeah, but it's not easy, and you might have to invest something in it before you're like getting long-term or mid-term like really revenue from it.
Like some customers still have to pay for certain extra things that they want. So how do you make the distinction? What do you co-create and just build for everyone? And what is the stuff that they have to pay for extra? And if they pay extra, can you still use it for other customers later?
Yeah, I think this is always an individual decision for each topic you're having, also depending a lot on your pricing on packaging. Like, are you building certain features in order to move customers from one package to the other? Are you building it to expand in their company and like get more people on? So this is like very different in every company, depending on how this whole system is working. And we did this differently for every feature, but this is a highly important decision you always have to make. So really, really important to think of, do I want to monetize what I'm doing here? Do I give it to everyone? Or do I use it as like another value metric of like gaining new customers that I might not have reached before?
Strategy in this case, and how important it is as a foundation for all of the decisions that you're taking, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're approaching the end of this conversation. Is there anything else, any advice or any topic that we hadn't touched on yet that you would like to talk about?
Maybe just one thing. I think really be clear that there are no small features that you're building, that features that no matter how small they seem, there's always a lot of things behind it, and you always have to have that in mind. Because otherwise it can get tricky in the future if you're like going along the way, and even it might seem like a good decision in the beginning. Be clear on what this means long term, and really educate your organization about it. I think that's the most important thing, and this is something I would have liked someone to tell me. Be confident about what you're feeling there. Be confident about your gut feeling that this is not maybe the right track to go on. And fight for this.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much for sharing, Julia. And where can people find you online if they want to connect about this stuff?
Just on LinkedIn, add me. More than happy to find like-minded people.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, that was fun, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye, Tanja.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Product Academy Tough Stuff.
We hope today's tough question gave you practical, actionable insights.
If you enjoyed the episode, do us a favor and leave a rating or review. It will help us grow the podcast and make future episodes even better.
Got a question for us? Send an email to toughstuff@productacademy.ch and ask away. We read any submission and might answer yours in a later episode.
Thank you again for listening. We'll see you next time with another tough challenge to tackle.
Until then, take care.